learning drives confidence, confidence drives behavior, and behavior repeated over time is what ultimately drives the culture. Like, it's easier to act your way to a new way of thinking than think your way to a new way of acting.
Welcome back to another episode of Making Out the SRE Omelette. We have a very special guest joining us today. We're speaking with Dr. Jennifer Petoff, better known to many as Dr. J, who leads Google's global site reliability engineering education. If you have spent any time in the SRE community, you have likely come across her work, whether it's through her role in the creation of the Google Site Reliability Engineering book, leadership in building Google's SRE education programs, or her countless contribution helping organizations around the world with their resilience practices. But Dr. J isn't just about reliability and systems. She's also an avid traveler and photographer, sharing stories and snapshots around the globe on her travel blog, Sidewalk Safari. So whether she's teaching us how to think about resilience or capturing the most unique doors on the planet, Dr. J brings a truly unique perspective on learning and discovery. Today, we'll be diving into a topic that sits right at the heart of effective reliability engineering, resilience enablement. What it really means to design systems and organizations that can not only withstand challenges, but actually learn and grow stronger from them. Dr. J, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for the invitation and for that very kind introduction. So you're making me blush, but thank you so much.
Jennifer, you have been the driving force in shaping how SREs learn, not just at Google, but across the industry. I would love to get started by first stepping back. What drew you to this work, and what keeps you passionate about SRE education?
Yeah, that's a really great question and something near and dear to my heart, of course. So I have to say, what really appealed to me in the beginning, back in 2014, when this initial opportunity to get involved in this space presented itself. So what was really exciting was the opportunity to build something completely from scratch. In addition, the program that we were trying to build at Google, it was designed to be a global program. And given my love of travel, given my love of working with a wide range of people, I thought it would just be a really cool program to tackle. And it turns out as well, like this type of project, it's totally in my wheelhouse, and it's the kind of thing I've really built my career around. And even up to that point, I built my career around. So to give you the kind of the TLDR and distill that all down, it sounded like fun, and it has definitely turned out to be. And I have to say, how can it not be fun when basically our SRE education program logo at Google is basically a unicorn wearing a rainbow jetpack. So fun all around.
Speaking of logos, I think for me, and I would say many of the SREs out there, one of the most famous logo of all is that iguana on the Google SRE book.
Yes, yes.
Can you touch on what inspired that first Google SRE book, and why is now the right time for a second one? Hopefully there's
sure,
no spoilers, but
no, happy to talk about that one. And I would say, so it's a ornate monitor lizard on the cover of the SRE book, and we joke it's the monitor lizard. It's big. It monitors things. There's lots of parallels to the way things work at Google in the SRE space. So we feel like we got really lucky with our O'Reilly animal. But just to get back to your question, the original SRE book was really the brainchild of Niall Murphy. So he was an SRE manager at Google Ireland at the time. He's now actually the CEO of Stanza Systems. So he's charted his own course and has started his own company. And I think at the time, this is circa 2013, 2014, there was really a lot of confusion outside of Google about what is SRE? What is this discipline? And why would an engineer want to become one? So this was our attempt to really share, the principles, the best practices, and organizational tenets of this engineering first approach to running systems in production. So again, the book was Niall's idea, but he really needed someone like me to make it real, to figure out the path from this grand idea to a book that we could hold in our hands. And it's a project that took us 2 years to do. And as much fun as SRE EDU was, like I was telling you a little bit about that, the SRE book is without question the coolest project I've had the opportunity to work on in my over 18 years at Google. And that first edition of the book represents contributions from over 70 Google SREs with collectively over 500 years of Google production experience. And just super fun to work on, and really appreciated the opportunity to be involved. And we're planning the second edition to coincide with the 10th anniversary of the publication of the original. So the original came out in 2016, and if all goes according to plan, the second edition will be out in the later part of 2026. And of course, like, why is now the right time? As I'm sure we're all aware, like a lot has changed in the last decade. So we felt it's time, and the decade anniversary just seemed like a good milestone to refresh the book upon.
So definitely a lot has changed over the last decade, and even a lot has changed over the last year. So looking forward to the second edition. Jennifer, you spoke of SRE, the SRE education at Google in your talks. What does it mean to SRE, the SRE education?
So our goal back in 2015, when we started the SRE EDU program within Google, was to build this consistent and reliable training program for SRE Nooglers. And for those who don't work at Google or haven't worked at Google in the past, so Nooglers are our new Googlers, our new hires. And we started with onboarding and had a goal to really get people up to speed so that they could confidently go on call for a service. And again, we started with onboarding, but now the training program is really a full life cycle training program from onboarding, the ramp up to on-call, and including some advanced electives that are taught by subject matter experts in an annual week of education event that we run every year. And in fact, it's coming up next week, so we're super excited about it. And we've even expanded the remit of the original SRE EDU program to deliver reliability-focused education across all of Google. So not just the SREs, but beyond to the developer teams, etc. And if we look more closely at SRE EDU orientation, our goal really wasn't to spray people with a fire hose of information, but rather to help them build confidence, vanquish imposter syndrome. And we also believe that the program is key to perpetuating a culture of reliability across SRE and beyond at Google. And just to make sure we're level set as well. So a culture of reliability includes, first and foremost, embracing reliability as a core value, and a real focus on the user, of course, first and foremost. And this culture is demonstrated by a data-driven mindset, collaboration, shared responsibility, learning and continuous improvement, blamelessness, psychological safety, trust, and empowerment. So and just park that in the back of your mind because I think we're going to touch on some of those aspects as we move through the podcast. But getting to your actual question, so we apply SRE principles to the training program itself, and we do this to enable scale and to drive continuous improvements. And this real aha moment for me was the realization that SRE principles and best practices, these things that are the subject of the training that we're delivering, could also be applied to the training program itself. And as we apply them to the program, we could scale the program super linearly to the size of the team. So we could do more with the same group of people. And one specific example of this is really automating away toil. We don't want people doing work that has no enduring value, that's repetitive, time consuming, and potentially error prone. And our automation spans things like our classes, our students, our instructors, our breakage scenarios, which is a hands-on component of our orientation. And we have automation that emails our instructional design team a list of open feedback comments on our training materials, and a job that alerts if permissions are incorrect on a doc. So it's basically trying to make things as easy and consistent and reliable as possible with minimum human effort. And the value of this really is we used to have a dedicated coordinator who would work full-time on logistics for the program. And with the automation, that person was able to load shed this repetitive toil and really work on new program areas. So for example, spinning up that annual week of education that I mentioned. So just really it's great opportunity. SREing the training program is just like, let's apply the principles to do bigger and better things.
I think that's a perfect capture of drinking our own champagne and applying the principles to education program itself. I'm curious, what have you learned from treating education materials like production systems?
First of all, I have learned that really education materials are just one component of that SRE EDU production system. Like, we also need to consider things like the instructors, the delivery system, our processes. The reality is we can't just focus on the what, that shiny training content. We really need to consider the how of the training program as well. And I really like to draw this analogy between the software development lifecycle and building and running a training program. So, of course, in the software development context, you've got your developers who are typically focusing on the what, so those shiny product features, while the how is typically the domain of SREs who are deploying those product features to production in a reliable way that meets the needs of our users. So if we think about a training program, again, there's often this focus on the what, like what are we going to teach, what training content are we going to deliver, and less of a focus on the how, or less of a consideration of like, how are we going to deliver this? How are we going to scale this out to like a really large audience? But just like with a traditional software product, reliability is a critical feature in the training space. Like, if you don't deliver the training program in a reliable way, like no one benefits from all that shiny content that you've created. And one other thing I've learned, learning is a key cultural practice in SRE. So I've learned a lot over the years. But if you treat the SRE EDU program like a production system, both the what and the how, is that those SRE principles and best practices are really very extensible. So even beyond the training program context. And I actually recently developed a talk and an associated Gemini gem. I've trying to embrace the AI tools as well, and developed a talk and a framework on how to SRE anything. Like, how do you basically apply all that SRE goodness to non-traditional situations? And this framework that I've pulled together, like, it's tied to the service reliability hierarchy, which we published in the first edition of the SRE book. And of course, that hierarchy covers monitoring, incident response, postmortems, testing and release, capacity planning, development, and of course the product itself. And from this, you can basically abstract a series of questions that you can use to build a strategy to tackle any domain in an SRE style way. So, for monitoring, like, what can you observe in the domain that you're tackling? It could be a training program. It could be running a restaurant. Like, I even did a worked example with my Gemini gem about, opening a clown college just for fun. If you think about incident response, it's all about asking the questions like, what are you going to do when something goes wrong? For postmortems, like, how are you going to learn from failure? For testing and release, how can you pilot new things? For capacity planning, when you think about the thing that you're trying to build, or the shiny features that you're adding to that thing, how is it going to scale? And then if you think about development, so how do you ultimately achieve the objectives that you set out to with the thing that you're trying to build in whatever the domain is? And then if you want to think about like a fully actualized product, like, how do you turn that thing into sort of a well-oiled machine, one that's reliable, one that's sustainable, and one that meets the needs of its users? So I love how rational and I love how extensible SRE principles and practices are.
I love it. I'm gonna steal and reuse that, the SRE goodness, and just further on how to SRE anything. I remember when I got into SRE, it was around the time I became a parent. And I was trying to take in the concept of SRE into parenting and raising children. I'm sure my kids got used to me asking them about, not just they made a mistake, but what did they learn? What are we going to do differently? And I guess coming back to the content, technology, and how technology process evolve, I was saying that best practices can often be a point-in-time statement. How do you keep educational content current and impactful over time?
I think it's just important to make it easy for people to update it in a controlled and verifiable way. So in general, we're driving for continuous improvements. We want to manage that continuous improvement and deploy it in small batches. This is consistent with industry best practices as well as written about very frequently in sort of the DORA reports that come out every year. So just you want to be able to be alerted when things need an update and make it easy for people to do, but don't let them go crazy and do it in an unsupervised way.
I think in one of your talks you have mentioned confidence leads to behavior, behavior leads to culture. How do your programs intentionally build that confidence?
I'm like, yes, like so much this. So my belief is that learning drives confidence, confidence drives behavior, and behavior repeated over time is what ultimately drives the culture. Like it's easier to act your way to a new way of thinking than think your way to a new way of acting. So, and there's industry research that supports this. Yeah. But if we look back at the SRE EDU orientation program, the TLDR about how you basically build confidence is that you get people hands-on with the tools. You let them practice, you let them try, you let them fail, and they learn from that much more than from a lecture series, for example. And in fact, like the first version of SRE EDU orientation was simply a lecture series, but we actually found it was much more effective in building confidence if we enable people to get hands-on with those tools. And for the evolution of the program, we moved away from passive listening and transitioned to like more of a lab type environment where people would work to solve breakage scenarios, and they get to troubleshoot a real system that we built for this educational purpose. So it's real. It's the same underlying infrastructure, underlying services you'd see in a real production system, but there's not real users on the other end. So this the stress level is lower when you're working on it. And the other thing that we do to build confidence, so we have instructor training, so facilitator training, and we instruct our facilitators to really like back off more and more as the lessons advance. So for example, they're very hands-on and offering support and sort of nudges in the first breakage scenario, but by the end of the week, they've really sort of backed off, and the students are just doing it on their own, and they're super excited and they feel more confident about it. So it's that's one way that we do it. And in addition, rather than having everybody fly solo, we also have people work in groups of 3, and we basically put like the least experienced person in the middle. They'll be driving the investigation and trying to figure out how to triage, mitigate, and resolve that incident in the breakage scenario. And we've seen with our survey results from our orientation program that this really does instill confidence.
I love that you also have that feedback loop and you kind of hit it. SRE is really a team sport, so I like how you have it. Even in training, you're not doing it alone, right? You have your team there with you.
Exactly.
I'm curious, what do you think is the most overlooked item in SRE education today?
For me, thinking about like how do you engage with people and engineers where reliability is not their day job. So I mentioned that SRE EDU was originally built basically by SREs for SREs, and that's kind of like preaching to the choir. Like they're people who naturally care about reliability. At Google, we have SREs, and we have an even larger number of software engineers. Our dev teams, and everyone. I think everyone needs to realize that like reliability is not just SRE's concern. You can't just kind of punt it over the fence. It's everyone's concern. It's basically all of our jobs to deliver business value to our users. And we found that SRE education programs can really raise awareness and build this culture of reliability even well beyond the teams that have reliability in their title.
That is so true. I think in many organizations when they read the Google book and they say we should do SRE. They simply rebranded people's job titles with SRE, and now it just magically happened. So Jennifer, thank you for the deep dive into the SRE education program at Google and the insights you have gained. If we were to step back or up to the concept of resilience, how do you define resilience enablement? Is it a superset of SRE enablement?
So from my perspective, so reliability it's about the system. It's working correctly under normal expected conditions. We're consistently delivering on our promises. Like, is the system basically performing as expected? Now, resilience is what happens when things go wrong. Like, how does the system handle and recover from unexpected failures, disruptions, like some stress on the system, while still providing some level of service. So like, how well can the thing bounce back when stuff goes wrong? And I think, in simpler terms, like a reliable system is good at what it's supposed to do, and it's good at that consistently. And a resilient system is good at surviving when things aren't going to plan. You can have a reliable system that isn't resilient, so it works perfectly until one small thing breaks, and then everything, is terrible. Or you can have a resilient system that degrades gracefully, even if it can't always achieve perfect reliability under extreme conditions. And that's really a systems definition, but I also think you can put a human lens on both of these concepts. So I think like reliable people, like they get things done. They work away under really optimal conditions until something unexpected happens. And then who knows? Whereas resilient people, like they're able to adjust, they're able to bounce back when things go wrong, when they're faced with adversity. And if we transition this to an enablement context, so I look at SRE enablement as like the learning programs that help SREs get better at running reliable systems. So it enables the humans to run the systems. Whereas with resilience enablement, I like to think of this more as independent of the systems themselves. Resilience can of course be a system consideration, but I like to think of it as more human first. So in this case, like, are there ways like we can help people become more resilient, like setting boundaries to protect themselves, from a personal outage, or to learn from any kind of setbacks that they might have?
What does the overlap of resilience and SRE look like in practice?
So I was thinking a little bit about this because like you ask tough questions, which I like. Made me think,
I try to make it more interesting.
So hopefully the audience will think so too. But so let's see the overlap of resilience and SRE and what that looks like in practice. And I think like again we can take a look at that like how to SRE anything concept or framework, like applying those SRE principles. In this case, like let's talk about applying it to the domain of personal resilience. Like so for example, can I start a habit of conducting a personal retrospective, like a postmortem when I face a setback? Can I use core SRE practices like capacity planning and load shedding to make myself more resilient in the face of change? And actually, just to go a little deeper on that, like I do think that capacity planning and load shedding are really fantastic life hacks. And I can tell you just an example of how I've applied this concept to my own life to become more resilient. So if we think about it, like so I set quota for my various aspects of my life. So it's like work, which is like day job, community contributions. And then I have other domains like my family or just general fun activities. And sometimes things come up in one domain and the demand is starting to exceed the quota that I've allocated in a certain aspect of my life. And if I don't do something about that, I would really, first and foremost, I'm going to expect a degradation in my well-being, or, in the worst case, it's going to be burnout, a complete outage. You can think about it like a cascading failure, where all the dominoes start to fall, each one catalyzed by the last. And so to avoid this outcome, like when demand for my time and attention really spikes in one area of my life, I use the opportunity to load shed and then borrow quota from the other aspects. So, for example, like when my mom got sick during the pandemic, like I had to make room to manage that particular situation. And I did that by, I load shedded anything that was non-essential at work so I could effectively deal with like the most important priority at that point in time. And in fairness, this has also worked the other way. So sometimes there's spikes in my work commitments. So it could be, executive fire drills, time-sensitive program launches, any number of things. And in this case, like I've been known to load shed on the personal side. So I'll ask my husband not to like over-program us. He's our CFO, our chief fun officer. So he's always got something cooking, something fun for us to do. So thinking about really like capacity planning and load shedding in this way has really helped me to SRE my own well-being, and I think become a more resilient person as a result.
I love that. Like I always often say, as technical community, often we teach all the hard skills. But I think what you just mentioned is such an essential, not just soft, but you put a life skill that everybody should know and for our well-being. I love that. So if we were to bridge the technical and the human resilience that you were going, what makes education resilient in high pressure or low trust environments?
I would say in a high pressure environment, making that education snackable, making it easier to consume is a great strategy. Because oftentimes in a high pressure work environment, like learning is often sacrificed at the altar of like, this is important, but it's not urgent like everything else that's on fire, the other things that are making that work environment high pressure. And to draw an analogy from my chemistry days, going way back in the day, like you've got to lower that activation barrier with a catalyst to make it easier for people to consume the learning that you want them to do. And I would say, like, even in environments where psychological safety is high, like it's never guaranteed to stay high. So I think regardless of whether it's lacking or regardless whether it's something you're trying to perpetuate, like it needs to be modeled from the top, and like leaders need to be the change that they want to see. So, if there's like finger pointing, if there's blame, basically leaders need to call that out. Like, first of all, they need to not be doing that. And then they need to also weed it out, like where they're seeing it as well.
I love that idea, just because it's good. You do have to maintain it. What patterns have you seen in how experienced SRE develop personal resilience? I think
SREs who are most resilient, like I've seen them be curious. I've seen them embrace learning opportunities. Like, basically they analyze setbacks to learn and grow from them rather than just, throwing up their hands and thinking there's nothing that can be done. I think experienced SREs with high levels of resilience, they ask for help. So if they realize that they're not in it alone, they don't have to be a hero, they don't have to do it all on their own. So just they're comfortable asking for help when they need it, and giving help when others need it. I think SREs who are resilient, like they take the time to recharge when they need it. So if it's been particularly like brutal on call shift, or that just they take that time off in lieu, they rest, they recharge, they recognize that I'm not going to always be at my best. I need to recharge those batteries. And then I think also another characteristic that I've seen is just like owning mistakes. Like, so, hey, they make a mistake, like own it and commit to improvement. I think just like with the systems outage, like you never want to see the same thing happen, exactly the same way a second time. So how can you get to a position where you're not making the same mistake twice? You've learned, you've improved, and it's this cycle of continuous improvement.
Asking for help is such a underrated skill, and knowing when to ask for help, not too soon, but not too late, right? So thank you.
And it's not easy. Like, I think some people are like, they either feel like, oh, I can't ask a stupid question. Like, there are no stupid questions. Like, the only stupid question is one you don't actually ask. And that's another thing that I try and model. Like, so I'll if I have a like I'm thinking to myself, this is a dumb question. I'm going to ask it anyway because someone else probably has that question too, and I'll be the one to put myself out there.
Yeah, and like you said, leaders setting good example. When more junior people see, oh, Jen asked that question, I can do that as well.
Exactly.
Actually, remember you got me connected with MP English. One of the things he said that stuck with me, and he said, I was asking a similar question. He said, I think he and the team at Google encourage new interns and new hire to ask questions. And he said, one case when someone asks a question, why do we do this? And when nobody had a good answer, it was a trigger for change and learning. So it's always, every question is always good.
No, and that's a great point as well. Like, I think it can be easy to get kind of stuck in a way of doing things. Like I came to tech from the chemical industry, and I remember like I was sort of like young and energetic and excited about like working in research. Like, oh, why don't we try this thing? Why don't we try that thing? Oh, we've done it this way for the last 40 years. Like, there's nothing that like drains energy more than just the like we've always done it this way. But I think like like you said, if you can actually if there is no like legit reason for doing it this way, like using that as a signal to maybe we need to like dig into this a little bit more to see if it actually does make sense or not.
Yeah, so definitely very good advice for not being okay with just the status quo and challenging that, right? So I know many organizations, I think after reading that Google book, really want to mimic what Google has. Jen, what does success in building a resilient organization look and feel like?
Yeah, so I think focusing on driving continuous improvement, no matter how small. Like a lot of times it's not about like the big picture, like fluffy idea kind of things. It's more about like, what am I doing tactically? How am I driving change? How am I driving improvements every single day? And so driving continuous improvement, no matter how small that thing may be. Getting in the habit of analyzing situations that don't go the way you expected them to, like whether it's the traditional SRE retrospective after an outage, or you do a retro on a project or process. Like get curious and think about like, what if we tried something else? What if we tried to get out of the status quo? I also think another aspect of a resilient organization is involving, like, it's empowering team members. So the people who know the systems the best, like, empower them to spend the time on the things they think are going to improve the system the most. This helps with morale. It helps with a sense of agency, and I think it also will help like level up resilience at the same time.
I love that third point, and that's really a way to ignite that passion and getting people involved. So Jennifer, we reached the part of the podcast where the guests would take out their crystal ball. In the spirit of SRE, if we were to run a postmodern learning on the SRE profession and discipline itself, what lessons stand out for you?
And I will admit, I had to stare into my crystal ball for a while to really crystallize my thinking on this one. But I think I've got a couple of good ones. So first of all, there is no easy button. So SRE, it really represents a profound cultural shift in the way you approach managing production systems. Another thing is, just because Google does things a certain way doesn't mean you should too. I think one anti-pattern we saw when we published the first edition of the SRE book was people saying like, oh, I gave the book to my team and said like, go do all the things in the book. But, your organizational context is probably different than what Google has. And I do think like the principles, the best practices, the culture of SRE, like they do have universal value. But like what you don't want is to really, again, hand over the book, like thunk and say like, let's do it, like without actually analyzing how those concepts map onto like your unique organizational context. Because like some of the things we do like might not actually fly in your particular organization. So you have to be able to flex and adjust and adapt to, again, your specific organizational context in order to be successful. I have another one. Lots of learnings. Like this is a key area of the SRE culture. And I think another thing that I put in the postmortem is there was like we've moved from the sense of like if you use this tool like you are an SRE to so it's not about technology, it's not about tooling, it's actually about the culture. The culture is what matters. You've all heard the expression like culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think that's also true of tools and processes too. So culture eats strategy, tools, processes for breakfast. And if you don't get the culture right, the other pieces really don't matter.
You're getting me hungry. Speaking of food, this be an omelet podcast.
Omelet, I know.
One of the things I was thinking about, talking about omelet as the culture, it's almost like, think about the book almost as a cookbook for a aspiring chef. It's really for the chef to create their own interpretation, but here's all the principles. And I think it captures that really well.
I think I was just going to say was in the second edition of the book, like I've already written this, like I've been heavily involved in that particular chapter, but like we will have a whole chapter on the cultural context of SRE. Whereas in the first edition, we talk about culture, but it's not like front and center, like it needs to be front and center.
It's interesting you mentioned that. A lot of times people say, you mentioned SRE about doing this tool, doing X and Y, Z, and I always flip it and say it's really a culture, it's a discipline. And it's not just because you put a title on Kevin, it's SRE X, they do SRE, it's really on the discipline. Anyone can wear that hat, right? Yeah, I'll really look forward to that chapter. So speaking of that book to come and the crystal ball, how do you see the SRE role evolving over the next year and decade, if you can't look that far?
The field is evolving like 100%. And we are definitely at an inflection point with the rise of generative AI. So I do think SRE is going to evolve as we embrace the tools that are going to make our jobs easier. Like we're going to be able to derive more nuanced insights. I think AI is also going to make our systems, like it's already making our systems more resilient by finding patterns in system behavior quicker and perhaps in ways that humans can't even see, that are not like human discernible. I also think, of course, codifying SRE principles and best practices into the infrastructure itself. So platform engineering, but I would like that. That's not really like a crystal ball thing. That's more like we see it. It's happening. That evolution, I think, is already here. Another prediction I have that I hope I see this in my crystal ball, but again, we all know hope is not a strategy. That's a key SRE mantra. I hope SRE will be popularized across non-traditional situations. So people other than me embrace this how to SRE anything movements. I see it taking hold. I see people using SRE principles, best practices, and culture to really optimize the what and the how in any domain. So let's see. We'll have to reconvene in 2035 and see if I was correct.
All right, that's a date. And I remember you said SRE is not, you can click easy button. I think we know staple size easy button. Perhaps Jennifer, we should merchandise idea, have an SRE button, like you said. In the future, people can just click on that. Let's SRE it.
Yeah, maybe we can put a unicorn on it. That would always make me happy.
Oh, there you go with the jetpack. So what's next for resilience enablement at Google or across the industry?
One key question to ask is how can AI actually help us to be more resilient as humans? I could envision a case where you've got a customized, personalized AI coach, that you can talk to when things aren't going according to plan, that can help you learn from setbacks, for example. That was just one kind of example that I thought of, but who knows, right? Who knows what the future holds in terms of resilience enablement? It's a tough question.
And thank you for your patience, for my constant curiosity. So the very last question I have is, what will be one action you hope listeners take away from this episode?
I'm all about the how to SRE anything. So I would love it if folks would try it. So like try to SRE something, apply those SRE principles and best practices to some non-traditional situation, like parenting in your case, or which you've already done, or who knows, like start that clown college that I mentioned. Even apply that framework to yourself. Like I haven't fully explored this, but I think there's an opportunity to use this how to SRE anything framework that I've developed for personal resilience, for tackling life goals that you might have. So I've actually, like I was mentioning, like codified the framework into a Gemini gem, and I've written up kind of how to replicate that if folks want to give it a try. Like maybe we can include it in the show notes. But I would love if folks could SRE something, anything.
Definitely. So as when we publish this, we should definitely ask the audience to get back and maybe respond in their comments on what they have.
I would love to see that. Yes.
So thank you, Jennifer. It's been such a treat to have a conversation with you. I learned like even 10 times more had just in the last 40 minutes with you than I have over the last few years. So thank you so much.
No, thanks so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today and make that omelet, SRE omelette.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank you, the audience, for listening. Be sure to visit sreomelette.com for more conversations on how the practice of SRE can help you achieve success for your business and your clients. And remember, resilience isn't built in the heat of an incident or in a single moment. It's forged through how we learn, collaborate, and support each other every day. So keep asking questions, keep sharing your perspectives, and keep making your own SRE omelette. See you in the next episode.